I think it's overshadowed and overlooked a lot, especially today, just how much as a society we're discounting the importance and the role of having dad at home.
Because you're going to make mistakes. You can't get away from it. And you got to be willing to go back and correct that mistake.
So yes, all the rest of you guys listening will make mistakes, not me. I don't make mistakes. As the dad, like it's never really real until it's like, oh, and here's your beautiful baby. Like, oh, yeah, there it is.
Working 40, 50, 60, 80 hours a week and missing out on your children growing up isn't worth it. Learning when I need to spend some time with my wife and my children before they're grown and gone is much more valuable than the money.
This is the Clark Connection Podcast, where 12 years of coaching championships meets real-world leadership. Coach Clark broke through at the highest levels. Now he's bringing you the playbook. Every week, real leaders, real wins. Real strategies you can use Monday morning. If you're done with theory and ready for results, this is your show. You in? Let's go!
And welcome back to the Clark Connection Podcast, where we talk leadership, personal growth, and entrepreneurship, helping you to grow into the leader you were created to be. Today's episode's a little different because not only are we talking about leadership and fatherhood, I'm sitting down with somebody who helped shape a lot of the lessons, values, and perspectives that I carry today. My dad, David Clark. Now, this conversation isn't just about being a father. It's about legacy, mentorship. It's about the pressure of trying to lead your family while also building a career, building a business, and trying to figure out life in real time. We talk about the fears that come with becoming a dad, the mistakes that turn into lessons, the importance of respect and manners and mentorship, work-life balance, and what it really means to pass down values to the next generation. One thing you'll hear throughout this episode is this: nobody ever fully feels ready for fatherhood or leadership. But the people who step up anyway are the ones who leave the greatest impact. Before I jump in, though, I want to take a moment and thank our sponsors who make this podcast possible. The Clark Connection Podcast is powered by Coach Clark Leadership and Development. At Coach Clark Leadership and Development, we help businesses, churches, schools, and organizations develop strong leaders through leadership training, executive coaching, team building, and keynote speaking. Our mission is simple: help leaders grow so their people, teams, and organizations can too. To learn more about our services, visit CoachAClark.com. This episode of the Clark Connection Podcast is proudly brought to you by Hubbard Flooring Studio. Leadership, growth, and success all start with a strong foundation. And that's exactly what you'll find at Hubbard Flooring Studio. Vicki and her team help homeowners and businesses create spaces that combine quality, craftsmanship, and style. Whether you're updating a single room, remodeling your entire home, or finishing a new construction project, Hubbard Flooring Studio offers flooring solutions and custom blinds designed to bring both beauty and functionality to your space. If you're ready to work with a team that takes pride in getting the details right, visit hubbardflooringstudio.com or call 225-924-1582. Shout out to Steadfast Electric for supporting the show. With hurricane season here, now is the time to think about protecting your home and family. BJ and his team specialize in whole home generators that keep your lights on, your food cold, and your household running when the power goes out. Learn more at steadfastelectric.com or call 225-364-9218. I want to recognize Bobby with the Comfy Quest LLC for sponsoring the podcast. Bobby specializes in craniosacral therapy, a highly specialized form of body work. This work helps the body release deep tension, regulate the nervous system, and truly reset. To learn more or book a session, visit massagebook.com/acomfyquest. Or call 225-773-0307. A Comfy Quest. Specialized craniosacral therapy for a real nervous system reset. I want to give a shout out to Dr. Bob Smith, chiropractic internist, for sponsoring today's episode. Dr. Bob focuses on identifying the root cause of pain and dysfunction, not just covering up symptoms. If your body isn't performing the way it should, this is the kind of care that looks deeper. Learn more at brspine.com or call 225-291-2626. Dr. Bob Smith, finding the root cause, not just chasing symptoms. A big thanks to Automate Integrate Professional Services for backing the show. Andrew helps businesses simplify, automate, and integrate their systems so leaders stop wasting time on manual work and start focusing on growth. Visit automate-integrate.com or email Andrew at automate-integrate.com. Automate Integrate, systems that work so you don't have to overwork. Thank you once again for helping us bring leadership and development to more people. Now, let's introduce today's guest. David Clark is the co-owner of Delta College, a leader in education and in business. And more importantly for today's conversation, a father who spent decades learning, leading, building, and mentoring others along the way. Make sure you have something to write on and with. And let's get into this conversation. Yeah. All right, guys. And Dad, welcome to the show.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
No, glad you came on. That wanting to kind of do more of a Father's Day special, talking about, becoming a father and leadership there. But I thought it was good, as one of the owners of Delta College, for those people that are listening that may not know, who is Delta College or what is Delta College?
Delta College was Delta School of Business when Dad first purchased it in the early 70s. His trip to becoming the school owner was when he got out of the military, he worked for a used car salesman who convinced him that if you're staying here, you're wasting your time. Take that GI Bill, go to college, get your degree, so on and so forth. And he did. And from there, he became a basketball coach up in, I think, the big metropolis of Grand Cane, Louisiana, and coached there for a few years. Moved from that to selling textbooks for, he may have moved to teaching down here first at the old Central High School.
Yeah, I think so.
And then from there, he went to selling books with Southwestern Publishing Company for the south of Louisiana, North Louisiana, and I guess some of the South Mississippi stuff in Texas. Was super successful at that and got to the idea. He said, why should I be teaching these people how to make money? I can do it for myself. And just so happened that a school became available in the Baton Rouge area. He purchased it, changed the name to Delta School of Business, and it's kind of been on from there. They went through name changes, escalations, and programs, and opening and closing schools throughout the South until he became uninvolved. But it's been a lifelong thing. Second generation now, and trying to make preps for the third.
Yeah. No, and it's definitely, I've loved the concept of it. It's one that I personally believe, just had a previous episode that we did with one of the sponsors of the show, BJ Foles, with Steadfast Electric. And that was what he was talking about was, not everybody needs to go to college, or at least not a big college, but everybody needs some sort of training.
Granted.
So,
said that for years.
I love it. Mm-hmm.
And, and to be quite honest with you, a lot of people in the education field now, and as well as the workforce, are seeing the need for the technical colleges. Used to be called proprietary schools, but now they're called technical colleges because for too long, last 30 to 40 years, the education high schools were pushing college, and nothing else. Well, they've lost their manual labor. And to be perfectly honest, I get confused if that's blue collar or white collar. I call it the dirty hands jobs,
Yeah.
You're getting your hands dirty and you're fixing things, and they're starting to see that was a huge mistake not to include the options of trades. And that's becoming a big push again. But
it is. And it's very much needed. It's something that the nation as a whole needs, not
absolutely.
just Louisiana and Baton Rouge.
Absolutely. Ask Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe is Dirty Jobs guys, whatever. He's actually funded and founded a trades pushing type program that helps educate people in the trades. Super. So.
Oh, I agree. And now, so I know some of it that a lot of your working career was, or from what I remember during like formative years for me, was down in New Orleans at Harley Davidson, New Orleans. So like, but I kind of want to start that with, one of the questions that I had was, trying to tie fathership into leadership, and, just super appreciative for having you that is my dad in my life, but then coming on the show and sharing. So like, what would be one thing that you say when like you first became a father? Like what was there any like initial fear or thing that you were scared of the most?
Obviously one of the biggest fears I think I've had and continue to have is fear of failure. And what that looks like differs per situation, but as far as becoming a father, I didn't really fear becoming a father, I guess, because I was busy, doing other things, trying to prep and prepare to, I guess, just to be ready, but so I guess one of the biggest fears was just not being ready, but honestly, you're never ready. I don't care how much you prepare, you're never ready.
Yeah. I mean, I felt the same way. I think it's a different thing for us as the dad. Like it's never really real until it's like, oh, and here's your beautiful baby. Like, oh, yeah, there it is.
Take it back.
Right. Well, I mean, according to Zachary, you can go return, like you can turn your little brother to Walmart, but I mean,
Yep.
So yeah, I do agree. That's definitely a good one to, like, hey, what happens if I'm not good enough? What happens if I don't provide enough?
Well, and always realize that you're not perfect. You're going to make it through the mistakes because you're going to make mistakes. You can't get away from it. No matter how much you try, you're going to try to do your best, but sometimes that's going to mean you made a mistake, and you got to be willing to go back and correct that mistake.
Oh yeah. I'll say, so yes, all the rest of you guys listening will make mistakes, not me. I don't make mistakes. And if you believe that, I've got some oceanfront property in Missouri that I want to sell you.
I was about to say, let's go ask Levi's Motorcycles about that.
I mean, I'm not. Oh, well, I guess we lost him, guys. Don't know what's going on.
Just like the Top Gun Maverick at 8.3 what is it? What's breaking the speed barrier?
Supersonic.
Yeah.
Mach 1.
Mach 8.5. You always had that audio breakup.
Yes. Oh yeah, no, we definitely have there's always going to be mistakes, and they're just learning opportunities. That's what I like to tell everybody is when you just learn. Nothing bad about it. It's part of life. And honestly, going back to even talking about the education system, I think that's where the education system fails us as a society is you're an idiot if you get this wrong. Instead of like, cool, let's learn from our mistake.
Right. Well, there's a lot of mistakes that they're making, but that's neither here nor there.
What about like something that nobody warned you about whenever you becoming a father? Like, what's one thing that maybe you would say nobody warned you about?
Nobody warned you, I guess, about just things that can happen, for out of the middle of nowhere, out of the best intentions, accidents happen. And especially if it involves your child, and you were responsible, but but they happen, and you go through it. As remember the fishing incident that I caught the biggest fish I've ever caught before out of the pond, which was hooking
Yes.
you.
That was a rather large fish out of that pond.
Yep. And or that prepares you for saying, hey, just go swim in the pond, and as your child's coming out of the pond going through the grass, there happens to be a poisonous snake right in front of them. Nobody warned you about those. But the biggest warning, I guess, would be just simply live through the mistakes, eliminate them as best possible, but live through them. Yeah, you can't live in a cave, you can't live in a shell or a bubble, so you gotta work through them and do your best, protect your child as best possible, and move on.
Yeah, and I will say that snake was the largest water moccasin that has ever been recorded. It was probably at least 30 foot long. Was about this big around, and red eyes. It spit at you and could talk.
Yep.
So
it was definitely a sci-fi snake.
Well, that's how I remember it. I remember it being that big.
I remember your eyes being that big when you were backpedaling.
That's the funny thing about backpedaling in water. It doesn't happen so fast. So, I mean,
it's a slow process.
Trying to move away as fast as I could.
Yeah.
No.
I say keep moving and live through it.
Yeah. I mean, there's no telling what's going to happen with those little ones, like you said. I mean, you'll just, next thing you know, you're like, hey, we're at the emergency room because a basketball goal fell on them, or
or in your case, a glider swing hit you in the face and made a nice big gouge.
Yeah. Well, I like to blame that one. My cousin intentionally did that to me. I'm pretty sure she meant for pain and suffering to happen.
Yep, she was a very devious person. Okay.
At 4 or 5 years old, however old we were.
Yeah. Well, I remember getting the call at work, coming home, and they holding that. It's like, well, you just got to go to the emergency room. That's all there is to it. What do you tell them? Tell him he got hit in the face with a glider because he fell off. But the funny part about that was when they were putting the topical cocaine on to numb it. Your mama was not happy about that. Go make my boy a drug addict.
Well, I mean, I did have a drug problem growing up, so I mean,
you got drug here, got drug there.
Yeah, I was going to say, y'all drug me to church every Sunday morning, evening, Wednesday. Drug me over to this, drug me over to that. Yeah. If you're getting value from today's episode, take a second to like, follow, and subscribe to the Clark Connection podcast so you'll never miss a future conversation on leadership, growth, and success. Let's dive back into today's topic. Oh, man. Now, what about like other funny parenting moments like that you can think of? It doesn't necessarily have to be mine, but
I'm sure there were many. I just, at the moment, at a loss.
all good. And so kind of now moving a little bit more into, that manhood and leadership, what would you say is it that makes the difference between a responsible man or like a grown man? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Like a grown man from a responsible man. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. They're, and to an extent, they're one and the same. It's just a matter how you approach situations. I mean, never be afraid to make a mistake, but also never be afraid to admit that it was a mistake. I think that becomes the responsibility of a grown man. I think like when you were teaching and coaching, one of my things I felt was still something to deliver to you was to remind you that, your job as a coach is to win. And sometimes winning is making better men out of the players that you get than where you got them, because in most cases, none of them are going to go to college, and even fewer of them are going to go to the pros. But if you can make them better men from the time you had them to the time you release them, that'll stick with them for life. And if I'm not mistaken, you've got a few of your players that still keep in contact with you. I think probably because you made such a difference in their life.
Yeah. I was about to say there are a few of them. A couple of those knuckleheads that still stay in touch. I'm still waiting for them to take me out to that nice dinner that they said they were going to take me to that they hadn't done yet. But yeah, well, I mean, I think too that's one like you were saying that's our responsibility as the father to instill that at home first. Being the leader of the family, it's definitely something that I think it's overshadowed and overlooked a lot, especially today. Just how much as a society we're discounting the importance and the role of having dad at home.
Very much so. Very much so. It's lack of a father in the house has been very detrimental to society as a whole. So people have come to believe that the commitment of a marriage and family just can be erased by signing a divorce statement and walking away. That doesn't solve a problem. It just creates more. I'm not saying that divorce is wrong in itself, but don't be uninvolved in your child's life. Don't punish them for the situation you and your spouse couldn't work out.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's too important that if there is a divorce, that both are working on the same page and not, like you said, not withholding one from the other. Like it shouldn't be, because I've seen both where like, no, mom's not allowed to see the kids at all, or dad's not allowed to see the kids at all. Mm-hmm. So I think that's important that they.
Yep. Well, one of my friends is in that same situation. He and his first wife had, I believe it was twin boys, but I can't tell you how long they've been divorced now, but for a while, she basically would not, she let him have a little involvement. Then she created an environment to where he had no involvement. And then in the last year or so, as the boys have gotten to be later teens, 15 and older, they've started seeking that relationship, which has really been happy for him, but sadly, it's also showing some negative sides to their mother, but it's one of those things that they're seeking it, just like what you're saying. And when it's separated out, at some point, it becomes missed. Are you going to seek it or you're not going to seek it? In my friend's case, he has, and he's excited, hoping to be able to have a relationship, with his two boys. So.
Right. And I think that's something that, that needs to, I mean, everybody needs it. You can't, it takes a man to raise a man. What you go look at any very successful person, they had some sort of father figure in there, whether it was their biological dad, stepdad, or coach, teacher, boss, somebody that helped take that person under their wing and like, hey, this is how you go from being a boy to being a man.
Right. And accepting that responsibility,
And now, so what would be something that you say is the biggest struggle for the this generation of men coming up?
Probably several things maybe, but communication. And I think that's a struggle from multi-generations, but you and your spouse or you and your children, you have to communicate. You have to talk things out. The silent treatment is not a good treatment.
Yeah. And so now, as far as like kind of switching it now more to like stuff that you were trying to teach me and my siblings, like what was something that you were wanting to try to teach us that without like actually having to say it?
I guess some things, of course, are courtesy and being polite, to your elders or just those around you. Some of those things just by actions, always saying yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, so on and so forth. But being respectful, um, at times to be the leader of your group of friends. Don't be the follower.
And now, why the manners? Why would you say that was important?
It's always been important. Disrespect will get you nowhere other than out the door. Courtesy and manners will get you through a difficult situation much better than being arrogant and mouthy. Police officer told me when I was a teenager, or actually he told dad after he called dad, told him he'd just given me a ticket because I'd kind of smarted off. And he said, I really was just going to stop him and tell him what he was doing was illegal. But, he asked, he wanted to see the rules or regs. So I wrote it on the ticket and gave it to him. But, and, so that officer and I guess a few others throughout time that I've gotten to know, said most people talk themselves into the tickets being belligerent as opposed to being courteous and polite. And Daddy has always told us too. He said, you get a whole lot further being very polite than you do not. So, and it costs you nothing. And the person generally respects you more for treating them with courtesy and decency. Example for me, at the Harley dealership one morning, it was probably about an hour before the bank opened. I needed to get in there and get some cash, be able to go to a bike auction or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. Knock on the door. Hey, yeah, they let me in, let me do the business. And I was on my way before the banks even opened. But that's because I go in and I talk to them. I built relationships with them. I had one of my bankers that actually was a great financial advisor for me. I was looking to refinance a house, and he sat down and went through it wasn't going to be with him, but he sat down and went through the scenario. What are you looking to do? Are you just going to do this for a couple of years and then try and turn it again if the rates change, or what? He said, if you're not going to get a point, 3/4 of a point to a point reduction, it's not worth it, because you're going to pay closing, you're going to pay this, but he became a good mentor about thinking through to the next step of things and being wise. But I think a lot of that came from just being courteous to him. I'd sit down and say, hi, how you doing? When I go into the bank, shake their hands, and move along. But courtesy will get you a whole lot further in life than being angry and mean or just disrespectful.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, think you brought up another good point. Like, what was the role of mentor? Like, you were talking about relationships and building relationships. Like, who were mentors of yours, and how, like what important roles did they play in your becoming of a man?
In personal, I guess, handlings of things more, my dad was more of a mentor. He, of course, demanded respect and demanded that you treat other people with respect, so on and so forth, and taught us how to be that way. Still to this day, I say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, Miss Smith, Miss Jones. Even when they say, would you just call me Pat? It's like, I'll do my best, but it's it's an ingrained thing, and it's no disrespect. Matter of fact, it's giving you respect because you're a person who deserves the respect, but as far as business went, Dad, to a small extent, do what you say what you do, never lie to the people. But some of it actually just came by going through it, to be honest. At a certain point, Daddy backed out and just kind of left it to you. And you learn by the school of hard knocks, but I think they say the respect training got you through a whole lot, people were willing to help you, teach you things, but because you gave them the
Yeah, and that's definitely one I know that has been passed down. Talking about the manners and giving respect and showing respect to everybody, and how important that is. It always makes me think of whenever Granddad was talking about the one flight y'all took, and the steward is coming up and saying, "Man, those three, they're yours. They're the most respectful kids I've been around." So,
yeah, that could have been either maybe the Colorado convention or either up in Ontario, but it was quite often, people would compliment courtesy of children as opposed to the disrespectful ones.
well, you're just glad to see the disrespectful ones leave. You don't even want to, because you figure, what the kids do is who the parents are. And when everybody talks about, the teachers leaving, that's been a huge teachers leaving education and just getting out, just the flight of teachers leaving. And when they ask them, they're like, no, it's not the kids, it's the parents. Like, I can handle the kids. The kids are going to be kids, but the parents don't force them or any of the discipline at home. They're their best friends, and let them get away with murder and do whatever else they want to do. Like, how can I do what I'm supposed to do? Now, I was going to say, now let's talk, because I thought one of the cool times for, as far as business, was the Harley days. Let's talk a little bit about that. How did y'all get involved with Harley Davidson?
Well, first got involved with motorcycles in 1985. We had a school down in Gretna, and the back of our school parking lot was also the back of the motorcycle dealership, the Honda West dealership. And Daddy just got a fancy and went in, negotiated a deal to buy part of it, and bought into it. And within 6 months, bought the other guy out and sent him on his way. It was a good thing, though. But from there, we just, I think in 86, he added the Kawasaki line in New Orleans, but he also opened a franchise or dealership here in Baton Rouge. And then somehow in 1987, late in the year, got contacted by the Harley dealership there in the New Orleans, or either he called them when I honestly don't remember. Bought the Harley dealership from the guy on a paper napkin at a restaurant our Holiday Inn restaurant in Laplace. And Harley wasn't real fond about it because we were a Honda dealership, but we were buying out a dealer that was selling or sending more of his new motorcycles to other dealers to be sold than he was selling to his own customers. He sold 12 in 1987. And when we bought it in 88, 12.
Like the number after 11 and before 13?
That's correct. And he was selling or transferring to other dealerships more motorcycles to sell to his customers than he was selling to his customers. Yeah. That one was always astonishing. But in the first year, we doubled or tripled that, Now, of course, we had a little hill to climb because most of the people in that day did not want to come into a Honda dealership to buy a Harley. They were rather snobbish. but from there, it just grew. By the into 88, 89, all the metric lines were gone, and that included Bombardier Sea-Doo in Baton Rouge and New Orleans, John Deere lawn and garden equipment and small agricultural.
A quick thank you to our premium sponsor, Hubbard Flooring Studio. Whether you're upgrading your floors, refreshing a room, or adding custom blinds to complete the look, Vicky and her team are committed to quality workmanship and exceptional service. Learn more at hubbardflooringstudio.com or call 225-924-1582. Let's get back to building better leaders.
Kawasaki and all their off-road, on-road product, Honda and all its off-road, on-road products, plus both of those had generators, and it was a mess. We had chock-a-block full of stuff and got rid of all that and did nothing but Harley until we sold it in November of 85. And that was actually one of the best decisions ever made. But I also thought Daddy was crazy when he said he was buying a Harley dealership. But to be honest, they were actually some of the best, if not the best people I've ever met in my life. Yeah. Super people.
Now that's quite interesting. The whole, I always forget about the napkin. Wrote a contract on a napkin.
Yeah. And honestly, as both persons signed it and dated, it's a legal document.
I mean, it's just paper.
It is a form of paper.
But I mean, but I think that goes to attest too. Back in, you said, was it 80, 88, 87, 88?
87, late 87, because we bought the dealership in 87. It didn't become official until 88.
But I think that's one that you can say that was different because that's almost 40 years ago now versus today. How many people would not have honored that today, making a deal like, hey, here, sign this napkin?
Yeah. I don't know, but it all boils down to the integrity and credibility of the persons you're working with. There was a day when your handshake meant that you agreed upon and it was going to happen. Then you had to put it in writing. Now you got to put it in writing, get it notarized. I might even be you got to put it in writing, get it notarized, and go file it with the courts to make people honor their agreements. One thing I did as a dealer and in life, so to speak, where I backed out on something that I had agreed to do, and I now know, honest to too, it was wrong. I should have just done it, but we brought in the Harley Rolling Museum. We're doing a charity fundraiser for is it St. Jude's Children's Hospital in New Orleans or Shriners Hospital?
I'm not sure. I just know they have Children's Hospital in New Orleans.
Okay, it's got to be the Children's Hospital then. It's going to be a fundraiser for them, and it's part of it. And honestly, on that day alone, we lost about $5,000 or $6,000. And the lady came and said, "Well, are you going to cut us a check?" I said, "No, ma'am, I'm not. I lost my tail today." And then I should have just written a check for about $2,500 and let them go. But I didn't. At that time, I was like, I'm responsible for this. I lost this much money. I can't pay you anything. And you didn't do anything but show up to try and collect the check. And then in actuality, that's kind of what most charities do. And I kind of learned from that, if you're going to do it, just go ahead and put it aside so that you're done. You honored your agreement. But I didn't. I sure enough did. And it did latter years now. It's just kind of like, I didn't do them right.
Yeah. But that's definitely, I could see where that is. I mean, I don't remember that. I mean, that was probably before I went to work with you, but in those early years, you're struggling, you're trying to get it going, and it's like, man, I'm not only answering to my employees, I got the corporate of my dad back home that's going to ask, why did you lose $8,000?
Yeah. And what can I say? But I should have just added $2,500 to it until lost and paid those people something. But
that's a good one. Now, what about as far as while we were there? Because that was one that I felt was I got the opportunity to come in, learn, and not necessarily work for you as my boss. I guess technically you were my first employer, but not necessarily my first boss. What was what was that like? Like, how did you see our relationship go from working there to even now? As far as
well, and technically I was your first boss. Nate was your first manager.
Okay.
Just make that clear.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was like, I wasn't sure how you would call that. He right. Manager, supervisor?
But my principle behind that was something that I learned from a customer who was a Ford dealer. And I believe he was either over in the lower Mississippi area. Talking to him, they'd come and bought a bike or two, or either had a bike to trade that they took on trade, and I agreed to go get it. But it was just chatting with them, and their process for their dealership and the family was, you can't work here until you go work for another dealership, because going to that other dealership, you're a nobody. They know who you are, but you're a nobody. So you learn the respect, you learn to do the duties, you learned how to follow orders, and so on and so forth. And so after a couple of years of whatever their training period was, they would come back to their dealership, because then they were ready to be in that management line, because they knew what everybody else below them had been through. So with you, didn't necessarily send you to another dealership, but it's like I sent you to another world by putting you under Nate, which was great. And Nate was a military guy. He was very regimented about things. And when I sent you to him, though, I told him, I said, Nate, that's my son. He's going to work for you. But always remember, that's my son.
And he did work me.
Oh yeah,
very hard.
I didn't tell him he was limited to what you could do, just what he could do to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I never picked up so many giblets off the floor.
Yep.
Or, I mean, I made sure that, I mean, I can't tell you how many times he checked that warehouse floor and that it wasn't clean enough to eat his meal off of. And so, do it again. Sweep that thing better. But that was good. It was a great experience for me. I mean, I didn't necessarily like or understand. So I just didn't like at the time, but understand why certain things were happening the way they did. But it was good because I think Nate was the perfect one to come under first because he understood the hierarchy and how to go from being the grunt to the person in charge.
Right. In his own way, he was a good leader. He's just kind of hard to swallow sometimes.
A little rough around the edges.
Yep.
I mean, you kind of needed that a little bit there too. You needed somebody who was rough around the edge because you were dealing with rough people. Employees were rough too. So, I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
And that was one of the things I loved the most there is you went from everything in between you went from the lowest of the low to the highest of the high all in the same day. I think that would be a funny one where y'all were talking about rubbing elbows with the rich and the famous and eating with the cockroach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, Dina's birthday.
I just remembered it right now.
Yep. Rubbing elbows with Larry Hackman and going out to eat with a waitress with a cockroach.
I'll say, so those who don't know, who is Larry Hackman?
He was Major Nelson off of I Dream of Jeannie, and I do not remember his character off of Dallas, but he was not a nice character on Dallas. He was a good Navy? No, Air Force guy on I Dream of Jeannie.
Yeah. And so, like, what was it that he was doing whenever y'all got to meet him? Or what were y'all doing?
Well, we were trying to supply bikes and parts to them for a show where he was a judge and was going to be riding a bike. And so they just kind of came in, did a little business, and the movie or the series didn't make it, but got to meet him, sign a few things. So it was fun.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. No, and you definitely got, like, I thought there were a lot of cool, different people we got to meet in between. I want to take our relationship to the next level. Let's become social media friends. Follow me at Coach Clark Leadership, and let's keep the conversation going in between episodes. Now let's get back to the connection. And I would say that was one of the coolest things that I learned from you was how to work with people, work with somebody who is a high esteemed person and then somebody who's not a high esteemed person, and that just really treating them all the same, like not that just because you are the president of the United States doesn't mean I treat you any different than I treat Joe Blow off the street who really has no business doing business at our store because you don't have any money.
Yeah, no, most people just want to be treated normal.
And so kind of as we're getting close to time, starting to wind down, wrap it up, that if there was anything that you could go back and redo, like that, what would be something that you would redo that throughout that fatherhood?
one thing is of course, you have to be able to go back, retaining the knowledge that you currently have grown to know now, but go back and realize that working 40, 50, 60, 80 hours a week, 6 days a week, and missing out on your children growing up isn't worth it. Learning to realize that there's X amount during the day. Afterwards, I need to go and I need to spend some time with my wife and my children before they're grown and gone, is much more valuable than the money. I got into the mistake of thinking, I got to do this because I can't fail. And as opposed to, I'm not going to fail. I'm done with all I can do for the day. I need to go spend time, make time for those who deserve my time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think some of that too, because that was one I didn't understand as a young child. And I definitely understand it now more being a father myself was, but it came from the top down. That's what you saw. And your dad, granddad was very famous for saying all the time, like, I don't remember my dad the only memory I have is us leaving a house and him passed out in a chair. Like, that's his only memory of his dad. So he didn't really get to see it. And so he said that, hey, we're going to work hard, work hard, work hard. Well, that's your job. Your job is to work hard, work hard, work hard. And I know that's one that I tried to, towards the end of my high school career, I really started trying to instill into me and my brother, that especially like, hey, don't do what I did. I didn't realize that. And I thought that even though it didn't mean anything to 16, 17, 18-year-old Aaron, I mean, they're all pretty dumb anyways at that age. But it made a difference whenever the time came to, all right, well, I got to spend time.
Right.
And try to figure out how to be involved in my child's life.
Right. And one of those things that goes along with that is just because I didn't think it was important or good enough to be there is incorrect. If it's something they're involved in and they want to be involved in, it's important enough for you to be there. And I, that was one of my learnings too.
Mm-hmm. No, but that's what we do. That's breaking kind of, because I can only imagine what granddad's dad was, or, so I don't know what our great grandfather's father would have been like, or, I have to imagine that, he was the start of breaking that generational curse. And then that you not wanting to pass that on to like, hey, we've got to be a little bit more involved.
Yep.
And hoping to pass that on down.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder, one of those things too is teach your children, if you don't ever start something, you don't have to worry about stopping it. There's so many opportunities in today's world to get involved with things that are harmful. If you don't start them, you don't have to ever worry about getting out of them or stopping them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was about to say, and then, I think you got all the other parts too, where, in that you get to teach your children, you get to go in and impact. And now you get to enjoy the season of being a grandfather, or pops, as we like to call you. And so what would you say is the biggest difference from going from father to grandfather?
Well, of course, the experience of knowing that I can spoil them and send them away, but also,
Geez, thanks.
yeah. But, part of it too, I think, as I was sitting here thinking, um, is watching you make mistakes and not saying something because you have to learn to make those mistakes as well, you know, unless you ask the question, well, how would you have done that? Or do you think I was a little bit too tough? You know, and so some of the big things is learning to be quiet, and because you're going to make mistakes and you're going to do things the way that you believe they need to be done, unless it's just really over the top. As a grandparent, it's hard to see your grandchild necessarily punished, but knowing that they deserve it means sitting back and being quiet and supporting the parent through what they're trying to do.
Yeah. I was about to say, and I know on the spoiling, I know whenever we're traveling around, anytime you got to go bring Levi to racing, he always enjoyed going with his pops.
Found that out after a few trips. I bought
like,
snacks.
yes, you bought a lot of snacks. Whereas I was like, dude, we're getting in, getting out. You need to go to the bathroom and you want a snack, you better get it while I'm pumping this diesel, boy.
Yep. Yep. Or the next stop is the side of the road. You can take care of business there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So he told me that I don't remember where we were traveling. He's like, Pops always lets me go in and pick out all the snacks I want.
And I believe the response was, I'm not Pops.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so if you could give, as we're kind of wrapping down, I'm going to kind of close with two questions. I don't typically close with these, but what's one word of advice that you would give any father that as they're trying to do that, I guess just any advice you would give to a father on this Father's Day episode?
Right. Well, one, of course, really try and ground your marriage and your parenting in the Word of God. Doesn't mean perfect, doesn't mean correct all the time, but the foundations that will come back to serve them well will be granted or pushed in that. Even our founding fathers, as we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of our country, several of which were not believers in Christ, but they knew the guidelines and the foundations of principle through the Bible and the Word of God was very important to base our country on. That didn't mean everybody was a Christian, but we had guidelines and principles. Don't be afraid to do that. I know society tends to move away from that, but in the long term, society here is just a small amount of time. Eternity is going to be in heaven or hell. And it's the long game. Don't be afraid to play the long game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the question that I ask everybody at the end of the show, like, what's one thing that I should have asked you that maybe I didn't ask you?
I don't know, to be perfectly honest, but maybe, what do you regret the most? And I guess for me, and you may have asked it, regretting the most is not learning early enough to spend time. And time is the most important thing that I have to give to you, your sister and your brother, as well as your mom. And because I can't get it back. And so I replenish some of that time by spending it with the grandchildren for the time I lost.
Yeah. No, and I'm grateful that for your leadership, your mentorship, and that everything that you've done. Like you said, you hadn't. I wasn't always the easiest of people to correct while growing up. I tend to be a little hard headed, but I always was listening and watching, and you left a good example and had the start of a good legacy, I would say, to us three to be able to pass down to the 8+1 on the way grandchildren.
I try.
And so I'm very appreciative of that, and thankful for that you came on and spent a little time with us on the show, Dad.
No, it's my pleasure.
Man, what I appreciate about this conversation is that it wasn't polished, perfect, or overly rehearsed. It was honest. I think one of the biggest takeaways from this episode is realizing that leadership and fatherhood are a lot alike. You're never fully ready. You're going to make mistakes. And a lot of times, you learn while you're in the middle of responsibility. But the consistency matters. The presence matters. The example matters. We talked about respect, mentorship, integrity, communication, balancing work and family, and even some of the regrets that come when life moves too fast. And I think that's important because too many people only talk about success stories without talking about the sacrifices and the lessons behind them. To all you fathers listening, whether you're raising young kids, mentoring people around you, or trying to become the kind of man your family can depend on, I hope this episode reminds you that leadership at home matters more than most people realize. And Dad, thank you for coming on and being willing to share on the show, to share your perspective and have a real conversation with me for this Father's Day episode. I appreciate you. To everyone listening, if this episode encouraged you, challenged you, or reminded you of someone who's made an impact on your life, make sure to share it with them. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Clark Connection podcast. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you listen. And remember, you don't need to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. So keep leading, keep learning, keep connecting, and I'll see you on the next episode of Clark Connection Podcast. Happy Father's Day, guys. Thanks for listening to the Clark Connection Podcast. If today's episode added value to you, do me a favor, follow the show and share it with someone who needs it. You can connect with me at my website, coachaclark.com, or on social media at Coach A. Clark. All the links are in the description. Until next time, keep leading, keep growing, and keep connecting.